Hello, everyone. My name is Alan Mills, and I'm a board member of the Indianapolis Repertory Theater and also part of the nominating committee. I want to welcome all of you today to our lively discussion on the play number 6. We're going to be answering some questions in our chat room later on, and we'll also have the opportunity maybe to take some questions from the Zoom participants as well as those on social media. We'd also like to make an acknowledgement with regard to the land that we in Indiana live on. It is the land of indigenous people, including the Miami tribe, the Pinkashaw tribe, the Wahi, the Potawatomi, the Kickapoo, the Delaware, and the Shawnee. We pay our respects to them. And we also acknowledge that the IRT, which now produces plays, was originally built as a segregated movie house in the 1920s. And while we cannot necessarily recall the name, this is the history that's all part of our history and who we are. So let's get started with our wonderful panel tonight. We have Myra Selby, who's a partner at Ice Miller. We have Aaron Williams, who's the principal of Williams Law. We have Dr. Monet Bowling, who is at Hendricks Regional Health. And we have Denise Herd, who is the president of Herd Strategies. Now, I've seen the play and have quite a few impressions of it and realize the relevancy of it to our current time and situation. But I want to first start by making a couple of observations. And one is that even though things have changed, some things still seem to stay the same. And two, I want us to think about how can we get ourselves out of this box that we seem to have been in for the last 300 years. And so I'll start with the first question for our panel, and it ties into both of my observations, and that is, history is kind of repeating itself, and we continue to see Black citizens disproportionately harmed by police violence. How did the events that took place in 2001 resonate with what's happening in the country today? And if our panelists could first talk to that, I would enjoy that.
Well, Alan, what I also have watched the play, and I would encourage any of the folks tuning in on our panel to, if you haven't seen number 6, please take the time to view it. It's still on air at IRT through the end of the weekend. But in watching the play, you really, the first several scenes center on Ella, the mother, and her 2 children. So Ella and her family. And it really grounds you. I felt like it grounded me in a very common, very reachable family situation where this mother was just trying to make ends meet, trying to keep her kids safe, trying to knowing that there were things going on outside, and you learn that it's a riot. But in the first part of the play, you get very deeply grounded in the day-to-day life of a mother just trying to raise her kids, trying to do right by them, and them being normal teenagers, living at home with mom. And so that everyday existence was the first, I think, part of the play that resonated to today for me, because I believe that so many of us experience these times of horrible strife through our own families, through the people that are nearest and dearest to us each and every day, whether it was when my middle school son came to me asking me about Trayvon Martin, or whether it's someone remembering you know, the riots that occurred in Ferguson. So that was what struck me the most poignantly. Just that Black family and that mother doing what so many of us do.
Play was phenomenal. And I think what struck me most, I do like Myra's comment about how you have this mother who's trying to get by, but then I thought all of those issues of bringing family together and kind of all of the things that tie a family together and all these traumas that you go through and how that shapes us as we're moving forward. There was one line where their mother said, I was just trying to make sure that we would be here, that they would be alive. And with that was very telling of her wanting to protect her children. And I thought that that was very important because that meant a lot to her.
Do you think that this effort that Black parents have to go through to protect their children, does it take away from other things that most other families can do to provide opportunities and raise their kids in a way to get them active in society? What does it take away from it? Because there's a lot of energy there and there's a lot of focus there. And if you're focusing on one thing, you may not be focusing on another. Do you think it takes away from anything in our families?
So I'm not a parent, but I have nephews. And I think that, I don't know if take away is how I look at it. I think it adds to your stress level. It adds to your heightened sensitivity. It adds to your need to stay above and alert and awake at all times. I think it adds to your ability to just move about freely in your thoughts, in your actions. You know, you get scared every time they leave the house. You know, you don't want to be overbearing because we all went through it. We all grew up. There are certain rites of passage that all children go through. The first time you get to drive without your parents in the car, you know, the first time you get to hang out with your friends without your parents looking over your shoulder. There are just certain rites of passage that we all go through. But I think for Black children, it's like, uh-oh, here it comes, but you know you have to let them fly. And so it just adds to your stress level, I feel. Like I worry a lot for my sister, my brother-in-law, my nephews, you know. So that's how I look at it.
If I could add to that. So I am a stepfather, instant family, 2 teenage daughters, and then 9-year-old son. And I can definitely see how that might take away some aspects of just their youthful innocence, where it's a necessity because lacking information is dangerous. But you know that in having those conversations with them, you're stripping away some of their youthful, innocence, and that it's unfortunate.
I'm actually going to mention that stripping away of their youthful innocence. I think that it's very different because I can remember growing up and not feeling that sense, but very different. I grew up in Atlanta. It was after certain things that happened in Atlanta, and the running commercial that was going on in Atlanta at the time of me being a young child was, "It is 7 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Do you know where they are? Do you know what's going on?" We were worried about someone kidnapping us. That was the biggest worry. That was literally the biggest worry of anyone in Atlanta. Do you know where your children are? It's dark out. And we laugh and we joke about kids being home when the street lights come on. But my mom came visit me in Indiana and she said, "Street lights are on. Where are the kids?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, street lights are on, but they're right outside." She's like, "They need to come inside. Everybody needs to be inside." So again, in shaping the people that you become, of the people that you are, of who we are as Black parents, having been these Black children, you know, we did come in when the street lights were on. We did come inside. We stopped doing everything that we were doing. And that is very interesting because some of that never goes away. It never goes away. It's with you forever.
Yeah. You know, with this play in 2001, and we now have, you know, 2021, where the issues of these police action shooting aren't just police officers and Black men, they're also Black women. Has that dynamic of having more Black women at least now being reported? It may have very well been happening before, but not being reported before. But does the dynamic of having more Black women involved in these scenarios, what does that do to the conversation? And what does that do to our community?
I think it makes us feel like no one is safe. Not that we ever felt some safety net, that it was Black men, because that didn't make me feel safe either. But to know that there were women who were in a car or in their bed asleep or coming from work, I mean, all of these things that happen, and there is no safety net. You're not even safe in your own home. And I think that that is very telling, because you lock your doors, you make sure that the lights are out, you make sure that everything in your house is safe, and you're thinking that you are safe. And I don't think that that safety net exists for people the same way that it did before all of these events happened.
Very good. You know, I sometimes wonder if the fact that this is now happening to more Black women puts the issue out there in a way that perhaps we can reap more allies. And I think that sometimes there are perceptions of Black men that if it happens to a Black man, people just throw up their arms, or people outside our community throw up their arms and, you know, and keep walking. And I wonder if some, given the sexist nature of our society, whether in some ways these events bring more hype and awareness to these issues and perhaps even gather us more allies. I don't know.
And I was just going to, and this is obviously from a limited experience and just my own perceptions, but it probably lessens the aggressor status that is attributed to males. So to your comment earlier, throwing up your hands, one thing that happens is that the officers are given the benefit of the doubt. They assume that, you know, there's a hard job, they have to make split-second decisions, and therefore, if something went wrong, unless it was egregious, then we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And oh, by the way, the person that the violence was acted upon was a Black male, and therefore but some might implicitly assume that they were involved or contributed to the aggression, the escalation. And though it doesn't disappear, as we've seen in the narrative, it seems to be lessened when it is a female victim.
We've seen that there is a need for better training of police officers. And what do you think this summer of the Black Lives Matter protests, what do you think that it's revealed to us? And where do you see some hope out of this abysmal pit?
Well, Alan, I like your language, abysmal pit. That gives us all hope. I guess we're looking up from the abysmal pit. You know, one of the things that I found a powerful message from looking back on the summer, and there's now been enough written about what happened in many major cities across the country, was that there were some commonalities. And one of them was that you had a bit of a sort of a disconnect between the goal of providing safety for people who were intending to engage in peaceful protests. And then some of the follow-on actions and incidents that happened. And in city after city, one of the common themes was a lack of preparedness. And I think that, you know, we learn from studying incidents, and it seems to me that one of the things that I think policymakers and you know, society at large has to reckon with is this sort of lack of preparation going forward. And what does that mean? And it's not all about one specter of society. It's not just about police. It's not just about public safety. It's not just about you know, how downtown neighborhoods and streets are configured. It's about all of that. And I think one big learning point is that we were not, as a nation and as, you know, people who live in the major cities of America, we were not prepared.
I agree with that. I think also what we've seen is an awakening. I think for so long, many people didn't understand parts of our Constitution, parts of our local laws, you know, municipalities, how laws are formed, how ordinances are formed. They didn't know who was responsible for what agencies that govern our city. They didn't, you know, you mentioned policy. I think that, you know, they didn't understand that when you don't vote, this is why certain things become laws, or certain people are in office at the municipal level that are guiding, you know, some of the things you witnessed over the summer. So I think what we saw was an awakening of sorts of, yes, you know, Black Lives Matter, but let's get down to the policies that are impacting the lives that matter so much to us. Let's look at the people who are holding office or is sitting in appointed positions that are making budgetary decisions. You know, how can we be, you know, are we going to our city county council meetings and testifying? Are we going to committee meetings and testifying? Are we at the hearings? Are we doing that boots on the ground work? You know, we have the ability, I think that people realize is that we as taxpayers and as voters, we have a lot more power than we realize. What we needed was more knowledge and education to support what we were, the change or enact the changes that we'd like to make. So I think you're seeing an emergence of people becoming more vocal and more knowledgeable and really coming from a place that is, you know, rooted in direct change, you know, changing policy, changing laws to improve the quality of life for Black people moving forward.
I was just going to say, something that many certainly in the justice community have thought was needed. I just saw recently where a couple of states have passed requirements for a reinstitution of a year of the study of civics in either middle school or high school, which is something that, and Aaron, I'm sure can speak to this, is, you know, the opportunity to learn a little bit about how, you know, government works does enable people to know that they do have the power of the vote, as Denise says. But you have to understand a little bit about how the system is configured and works first.
I agree. And so many of us don't. And so we get mad, and the anger is justified. It truly is. But in order to change policy, governance is critical. I mean, you have to understand that.
Speaking of government, Denise and Myra, can you be a Black Lives supporter and at the same time be a supporter of these new voter suppression laws that we see in Georgia and other places? And can those two things exist? Can you be that person?
Supporting voter oppression?
I mean,
No, I said, can you be a Black? I mean, there are people who will say that they're Black Lives supporters, but Black Lives Matter supporters, but yet they don't see a problem with these voter suppression laws and view it as we're stopping fraud and things like that. And so my question is, can you be a supporter of Black Lives Matter and really stand idle to these voter suppression laws, in your view?
but I think what is very critical is the education and the knowledge, because I don't think people know. You hear voter suppression and they have no clue what that voter suppression looks like or even what it means. I don't think that people are reading every bill and so they have no clue. And they just think, oh, you know, you can't give people food while they're waiting in line, or all of these things are going on. And we have forgotten that the government is for the people. And we do have to educate ourselves on what is going on. Can you support voter suppression and Black Lives Matter? I don't see that living in the same world, but I also don't think that people who are supporting voter suppression were out protesting for Black Lives Matter. I don't think that those were the same groups of people who voted in a room that was a closed door to sign a bill that basically said that keeps people from voting, and that we're out protesting. I don't think that those two people are one and the same. And I think that what it tells us is how important it is for us to vote. People who control the government are also controlled by the people. And that is why states like Georgia that turned blue for the first time ever, for people to know the power of their vote.
You know, it does seem to be intellectually inconsistent that people could be that way, but we know some people voted for Obama and also voted for Trump. And so I guess the point is, it's more like in corporate America right now, there has been a dial in, a leaning in on Black Lives Matter, but those same corporations are not speaking out the same way with regard to these voter suppression laws. And so can they be on the same page? And is silence violence here?
I think there are two major topics. You know, voter suppression and Black Lives Matter are two agendas that, kind of resonate with one another, but each one has different objectives and missions and goals. And I think it's important with respect to voter suppression for we as a people to understand, if your vote didn't matter, people wouldn't try and suppress it. So understanding the power that resides with the vote. But I think also, you know, when you put a law in effect, it does affect everybody. And so I think it would be interesting to show that putting in voter oppression, here's how many white people you're going to impact that may fall in a particular socioeconomic level that you have now oppressed as well. So in your attempt to oppress this particular race, you've hit all these others as well. And these are the percentages. But I think there's more of that needs to be done, because when you oppress one, you oppress everyone. And I think that we need to do a better job of showing, like, now here's how you've oppressed your own. So in your attempt, because we will always find a workaround. You know, if you look at historically, African Americans always find a workaround to get done what we need to get done. So you can try and oppress the power that we have, but we're going to find the workaround. Will the others, or will they come on board with us because they too feel oppressed? So in your quest to oppress, make sure that they're aligned with you, because you might be surprised.
It's very good, Denise. Very good. Very thoughtful. You know, often with these police action shootings, you know, there's a contingency of the population that says, oh gosh, yes, this is terrible, and there are a few bad apples. how does this saying there's a few bad apples, how does that comport with all this discussion of systemic racism? And does saying that there's a few bad apples, does it hurt? Does it help? How do you juxtapose these two or deal with these two concepts?
Well, I think the play does it in a very, very poignant way. You've got, I think the police officer's name is Kelly, and he was present and partnering with the officer that shot the unarmed Black male in the play. That comes out probably halfway through, or maybe a little more than halfway through. He reveals this to Felix, the son. And that scene, I think, was the most powerful in the entire play, because while he's telling Felix, I was there, I did not shoot him. I didn't intend to shoot him. I did not harm him. He also has to say out loud about the officer who did shoot him.
Mm-hmm.
Why couldn't he have shot him in the shoulder or the knee or the I think he says the leg or something? In other words, he was questioning the actions of his partner in that moment. And he was questioning out loud because he was trying to deal with the reality. And so I think that a few bad apples might be what it is often said to say that it's not a basis for broad sweeping or widespread condemnation. But the truth is that, these horrible events do affect everyone. So Kelly was still dealing with his own demons from witnessing what had occurred and living through a time when he was having to be in and up close with a Black family who was just trying to survive and trying to stay alive and stay safe, and a mother trying to raise her two children. So I think that the play did a really good job of raising those dilemmas. It doesn't give you any answers. There's no package that you walk away with happily ever after, which is, what we get to see in Disney and other drama. This play raises those questions, and it allows you to keep questioning, I think.
Would others like to tackle that one? Aaron or Monet or Denise?
No, Aaron, I can go after Aaron, sure.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. So when I hear a few bad apples, I see it as a way of insulating the systematic issues which exist. And when something is egregious enough to warrant society's attention, saying, okay, well, here it's just this one person, we will now use them as a scapegoat to absolve ourselves of the broader issue that we need to contend with. Specifically, if you're looking at an actor and then bystanders, did the bystanders have an obligation to act and fail to do so? Did the bystanders cover up, conceal, or fail to report conduct which was impermissible? And then more broadly, are there policies at play that allow that conduct to happen and continue to happen without being for the individual who committed the wrongful act, as well as those who are bystanders, without having them being held accountable? So whenever I hear a few bad apples, I hear, okay, well, this fact pattern is bad enough that someone has to fall on their sword, yes, but it shouldn't be the overall system. And I completely disagree with that.
Monet, I think you were getting ready to add to that, Monet.
I was. So what I think about the few bad apples is really thinking about, for me, I agree, the play did an amazing job at looking at those bits and pieces and really gave me an opportunity to see things from another lens where I would not have seen them before or looked at them that way. And him having that conversation with Felix, but then having that conversation with the mother. And I thought it was very poignant about that this was a family, that their father had been, you know, things had happened to their father, that things had happened to the son, and all of these things happened. And he was actually trying to figure out how to help. They didn't know what was, and they were basically thrust into this situation. But a few bad apples doesn't clear anyone from accountability or reveal the implicit bias. I think that what was really important is that we realize that implicit bias exists. The whole reason why the play kind of comes into fruition, or why he was even there, was his actions in trying to kind of stereotype the son and thinking that he was breaking into his own residence. Like it just was, it was unbelievable. It was like, I live here. This is my home. This is our business. I'm trying to protect my family. And although, you know, I grappled with the mother in this, because she was, don't yell, but she yell at the kids. And I know you did this. You had to steal something because we needed it and we needed to eat, and we hadn't eaten in days. I think all of those things, you sit there and you're going in your head like, wow, what would it be like if the city shuts down and we can't eat for 4 days and we have to go in the street and go to somewhere that's already broken into to eat, have food, because we don't have food. What does that look like? And so I thought the play really took you there. But looking at the bias on the other side, as soon as they found out that he was an officer, it was all bets are off. And how Felix really looked at Kelly like, wait a minute, like, you've already put me into a brown paper bag, but I've also put you into a bag too. And I think that that was very important to look at the dichotomy on both sides of that.
Denise, did you want to add to that?
No, I think that Monet summed it up. I think it's perfect. I thought it was a great look into the other side of the conversation, because we never have that opportunity. And though we may not agree, it was helpful to look at that side of the coin, but also to have that transparent conversation between the two, and to be a part of that narrative, watching that dialogue going back and forth, because I think, in all honesty, that is a piece of the equation that seems to always be missing. You know, we hear one side, and we may hear the other, but we never hear the two having a dialogue with one another. You know, so I thought that was really compelling to watch that conversation between the two of them.
Given what we've seen in the play and what we've seen play out these last few years with police action shootings involving Black men and Black women, unarmed and whatever, the conversation that we often hear Black parents or Black aunts and uncles having with younger Black children, is that conversation the same or slightly different depending upon whether your child is male or female?
Oh, wow. Alan, that's interesting. That's actually,
we got to make you work. We got to make you work.
I didn't know that's where you were going with that. That is interesting.
I didn't either.
So I have two 12-year-olds and I have a 9-year-old. And the biggest conversation in our house is there's a trial going on. They are very interested. I come from an attorney family. They're very interested in every aspect of what is going on. So they're very into it. The selection process. What does it mean to choose a jury? What does that mean? How do you get picked? How do you not get picked? But really, at first I would tell my sons, you know, oh, you're going to be driving. This is how you drive the car. You stay at 10 and 2. You don't move. You don't move quickly. You don't talk back. You're very serious, and you don't joke around. Don't reach for anything. I have started to have that conversation with my daughter, where I thought I would not have to have the same conversation with her, but I have that conversation globally with the three of them, because I think that it is important to realize that threat or that fear that's out there is equal. It isn't different because of their sex. It may be different in the way that it looks, the appearance of them going out into the community, but that the threat that they are seen as, I think, is equal now. And I do feel that it is the same conversation. And that's on my part that it's changed, not them. It's coming from me as their mother, that these are the things that you do as a brown child going into adulthood. These are the things that are important that you have to realize, that you be respectful, but this is how you're not the same. Everyone's not the same. All things are not created equal. Even if they are, they're not. And so that has just really become a conversation coming from as their mother to really let them understand that it's not just little boys that are getting shot or gunned down or things that are happening. It is global.
Well, I would say in the play, the mother clearly has different conversation with Felix than she does with Felicia, the daughter. And one of the things that it struck me that even he begins calling his sister twin from the very beginning. So it wasn't immediately clear to me, but it became clear pretty quickly. Okay, these are twins, but they're at different levels in terms of their relationship with mom, their relationship to the family. And so Felix was clearly protector, or at least saw himself as protector. And Ella was, I think, sort of supportive of that, as she would go just so far, and then she would assert herself as, well, you know, I'm still the mother. And so I'm the dominant protector. And with respect to her daughter, you learn very late in the play why her daughter, she treats differently. She was treating her as if she were much younger than and needed more protection than her brother. And what you learn is that the reason for that is that she is on the spectrum. Well, for me, that revealed that mom was she had created a shelter for the daughter in recognition of the daughter's brilliance, her very, very deep interest in dinosaurs and anthropology and going forward in that way, and in being very supportive of her being in a calm, supportive environment. But the thing that struck me in this, having different conversations with your children, it wasn't based on their gender, I didn't think. I thought it was really based on who they were as people. I thought that Felicia needed a different orientation from mom, even though she was the same age as her brother. And so it was a different conversation. And the mother, her goal for her daughter was that she be understood, that people understand her and not misunderstand her. So I thought that was an interesting example of two very different conversations,
Yeah.
but not really based on, or not because of different gender, but because of different people, who they were, what they needed at that moment.
Denise, I see you shaking your head. You have some thoughts there you'd like to add?
No, I agree. It's interesting. So I think, Myra, your takeaway is interesting, because I saw Felix as falling into that role as being the man of the house, since, you know, there was no father figure. And so I felt like, kind of like the mother wanted to treat him like a child, but relied on him like an adult. You know, it just, and that was kind of my takeaway. And almost like he was, yes, I am a child, that's my twin sister, but I am a man, so I will be a man, and I will go out and forage and find food. You know, I will bring this person. You know what I mean? Like he was doing
Right.
all those things that the head of the house, the male dominant figure in a household would do. He was out doing it. Like when the store got broken into,
Yeah.
it was like,
And then he
I will
got in
go
trouble.
right. So he was doing all those things, but it's almost like, but he was a kid, but he had taken on the responsibilities of being, well, I'm a male, so I have to do these male things, but I'm really a kid. But my mother relies on me to do these things, but then she hollers at me like I'm a kid. So I found his character very complicated, if you
Yeah.
will, because he was also having a very adult conversation with the police officer, you know, but he's still a kid, but he's having this grown up conversation. So I was like, poor little Felix, he just wants to be 16 and
Yeah.
be a kid, but
Hang
he
out, play
can't
basketball.
because of society. We put so many pressures on our young Black men, like, don't do this, be this, do that. But it's sometimes they don't get a chance to just be. Whereas, like you said, the dynamic with the sister was a little different. And maybe that was different because of who she is and the fact that as it was revealed that, you know, she's on the spectrum. So the mother kind of coddled her a bit more, even to the point of hiding information from her that she wanted
Yeah.
to have, you know, and that was almost like the mother was doing that for her.
Monet is shocked.
Yeah, because it was kind of like, hey, mom, like these are your children, but they need to fly. But
Yeah.
she still wanted to be like her baby to be her baby. But
Yeah.
you know, Felix, you can go out in like the riots and find us some canned goods. Like I'm a holler, thank you.
Forage and pillage. Forage and pillage. I've got you.
Now, to be fair to Mama Ella, she did not know Felix had gone out there. He went out without knowledge or permission. So, you know,
That's true.
so let's be fair here. I see
Aaron, did you
Aaron,
want to
he's
add to any of
smiling.
that too?
He's laughing at us.
No, I really appreciate the comments.
Well, you know, one of the questions that's been sent to me that was asked is, you know, people are saying, what do you think about our city and what can be done about systemic racism? But before tackling that question, that term is thrown around a lot, systemic racism, and I'd like to go around in each panelist. You know, it doesn't have to be a perfect definition. You give me your feel of what your definition is or what your spin as to what systemic racism is. And then let's talk about what we might be able to do to help resolve some of that in our own respective community. So Aaron, you're on my screen first. I'm gonna take you first, and I'm gonna go Denise, then Myra, and then Monet.
So what I would say is it's institutionalized racism. That is, it's an individual or individuals' racism that have been embedded into a system or an institution such that it operates on autopilot. People don't have to actively be doing those things anymore. They're just following a set pattern, practice, or procedure, but that set practice, policy, or procedure is imbued with racist undertones.
Right. Denise, what would you say?
The same thing. It's almost like it's a normal practice. That's how it's always been. It's kind of like when people got mad that the Dr. Seuss Foundation was taking away some of the books because of the imagery that was in the books due to systemic racism. People were like, how can you do that to Dr. Seuss? I'm like, okay, but you understand there's images in there that paint certain cultures in a very negative light, but it's Dr. Seuss, you know, our beloved Dr. Seuss. Like, it's so systemic that people can't imagine that Dr. Seuss would ever do anything offensive. And how dare we take this literature away and out of, you know, the line of sight? Because it's just systemic. It's and people were like, get over it. So what?
That's a very good example, Denise. That was extremely good. Myra, you.
I submit that I cannot improve on my co-panelists, Aaron and Denise, and so I pass.
Monet?
So I will bring the totally opposite side of the spectrum of systemic because I'm medical. And so we talk about systemic all the time. And I often think about systemic as being the water we swim in or the blood that flows through your veins. You cannot even see life without it. It is there, it is flowing through you, it is all around you, it is a part of your system, and it affects everything. And so when I think about systemic, I just think about how it affects you in its entirety. Your whole entire body is your system. So if it affects you systemically, so that racism is systemic, it is within you, it flows through you. You're not conscious of blood flowing through your system until it's not flowing through your system, it's flowing out of your system. And so I think that for me, that is when I think about systemic racism, it's the whole of it, kind of the all of it.
All right, and that brings us to the final question. If you could think of one or two things that you would advise a person, this is what you can do as an individual to fight on a day in and day out basis, systemic racism, do that. Aaron, we'll start back with you. What would you say? What would be your one or two things?
If I may, indulge me just for a moment. I did a police interaction and accountability forum a few years back, and ultimately what I told people is, when you're looking at any issue, what you want to ask yourself is the policy operating as it's supposed to? And if the answer is yes, and it's rendering a negative outcome, you need to fix it. If the answer is no, but it's rendering a negative outcome, that is, people are just violating the policy, then you need to hold them accountable. And if the answer is we don't have a policy here to address the issue, then you need to be a part of the conversation, engage with your power to create a policy that is more equitable. So it's that kind of approach, having a systemic approach, and then just being conscious on a daily basis. How is, any particular thing going on? How does that approach connect up with that issue? So, and I won't belabor it because I want to preserve, save time for everyone else, but that's the approach. Find an issue, run it through that analysis, and then figure out where your point of involvement should be.
I think Denise, you're next. Yes.
Oh, so thank you, Aaron, for that, because my answer is so kind of loose, if you will. But I apologize. It's not as profound as yours or scholarly. I actually wrote down, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And so we all have good old-fashioned common sense. And when you're in a room, if someone says something and it doesn't sit right with you. The problem is so many of us sit in the room and hear something that doesn't sit right with us, and we don't say anything. So in order to address the issue of systemic racism, everyone must be vigilant. That's white people, Black people, our Latinx brothers and sisters, our LGBTQ community. Everyone must say something and not be afraid to speak up when something is said that doesn't sound or feel right in your soul. I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago and something was said that was so offensive. And I was the only person that said something. And ironically, what was said was offensive towards Black people. And I said something like, whoa, slow, and all of my white colleagues that were on that call afterwards said, we knew it was wrong. We should have said something. Yes, you should have. So if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So say something.
My daughter would say, be careful with that duck word, because an autocorrect on your phone, it comes out as something else.
Yeah, but we're live.
Go ahead, Myra, your turn.
Well, I adopt both Aaron and Denise's descriptions. And I would also add to that, acquaint yourself with history. All you have to do is know and understand how this country was formed, the laws that happened. Now, it doesn't have to be about slavery. It doesn't have to be only about slavery. You can look at laws in the 1850s in the state of Indiana. There was a law that required Black citizens to pay a $500 fee to the county in which they lived in order to be considered of good character, and in order to live and reside in that county. So know your history, or at least be curious about history, because history is what gave rise to systemic racism. And it's also why it still exists. Read books. There are a lot of books now that are being written and have been written about this topic. You can read books now and enjoy them in many different formats. You can read on audio. You can read on your little tablet reader. Read books so that you will understand and know more about this. It is not the burden or the responsibility or the job of someone else. It's, I think, to both Denise and Aaron's point, it's all of our jobs, all of our responsibilities. And so you need to be able to understand how to recognize the duck when it quacks. Hey, you knew I'd get it in, right? Monet can't talk because she's laughing too hard.
My goodness, because it's so funny. Denise, who I esteem and I love, does all of these great things, but I realized that my life forms around medicine. And so where other people talk about ducks, we talk about zebras. And so when she's talking about ducks, I'm like sitting here like, I mean, recognize the zebra, realize that the zebra is a zebra, and you just start from there. And so it's just really funny that we all have these things that we think about. And so to all of these points, being knowledgeable and knowing history is so important, but also the accountability piece, holding ourselves and the people around us accountable, because that is the only way to recognize that this is systemic and it's everywhere and we can make a difference. And, you know, I put this out on my social media tab, and I said, can we have an open conversation and an open dialogue, but can that actually make a difference? And so coming from an attorney who is a mother, and my brother is an attorney, and, you know, having attorneys been around my whole entire life, really looking at that, I was always told reasonable people can disagree, but there has to be a conversation. You have to have a conversation, and knowledge is power. And so that is how I would end it, is that arm yourself with enough knowledge that you know what is going on, know your history, know what's going on, know what the policies are, and that will make a difference in the world.
Great. Now, I want to leave a couple of minutes just in case anyone feels like there's something that they want to talk about that I did not capture about the play and its relevancy to our lives now. And so you have a couple of minutes if you want to chat about anything you want to chat about, please do.
I would just encourage everyone to watch this play. I actually was sitting here trying to figure out how I could have a watch party at my own house and have people pay to see it so that they could all see it together and that we could actually have a conversation about it. I thought that it was very on time, very poignant, and so well done. And in a way that people as adults, we can talk about this, and it doesn't matter who you are. But it is a very good look at both sides of the coin. And so I encourage anyone to please watch the play.
I agree. I found the writing to be brilliant, because you were captured from the very first word that came out of the actors' mouths, and it just took you along, even while you were appreciating these heavy, important, significant issues as they were unfolding during the play. You were being brought right along, and so it wasn't the situation where you were having to puzzle about any of the dialogue or any of the action. You could actually just watch and listen and learn. And so I too would be very enthusiastic about having people go and watch it and then talk about it,
Great.
because I think that that's what it lends itself to.
Great. I want to thank each of you for being part of the panel. Some of you I've known for a lifetime already. Others I'm just meeting actually today, but just from the conversation, I know I want to find some time to pick your brains even later. So thank you so much. And I'm the folks at the IRT. Thank you. Thank you for being wonderful supporters. Thank you for seeing the play. Thank you for your insights. I think you all make us better people. So everyone can sign out now. I think we're done.
Thanks,
Take
Alan.
care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you.